So this is a hypothetical. I do have a client in this situation. Unfortunately, we're at an impasse. I'll explain. So the founder is the rainmaker, and the founder, as the rainmaker, generates about 80% of all the revenue that's coming in because of his reputation in the industry. I won't say the industry or anything, but he is well known. Everybody wants him. Everybody wants him to do the work, or wants him on the witness stand if he's an expert in particular testimony that he's given. He owns 75% of the stock. There's one other manager that owns 5%, and then we sold a piece of the company, 20%, to an ESOP about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. The ESOP, in his opinion, is more trouble than it's worth. Every year you've got to get a valuation. Every year you've got to do submissions to the Department of Labor. Of course, it's a qualified retirement plan. We told him that before he got into it, but he was looking for easy outs, easy outs. Today, he views the company as being worth X, and X is pretty high, and it's based on the assumption that the founder will be there generating the business. Because when you value a business, you look at its cash flow from the past, and you try to project out what it's going to do in the future. And you discount it back to the present. That's one methodology for valuing a business. And multiples of earnings and other sources of information are available for valuing a business. We talked about that last time. But his view, and he's an expert in valuation, by the way, his view is business is worth X. He's got a bunch of managers who are servicing most of these clients. 5 of them, to be exact. And none of them want to buy the business. He wanted to engineer a buyout of the business. But they think the price is too high because they know how to value a business, and they know of his importance to the business, and that if he leaves the business tomorrow, what's going to happen? There's not going to be any business. At least 80% of it. Maybe not all of it will dry up because his goodwill can be transferred to these other employees, and they know the clients too. But do they have the charisma or the relationships with these clients to keep generating that revenue? So what do you do in this situation where there's such a disparity in view of the value? I mean, we could get an appraiser in here to value the business, but in my opinion, that's not the answer. That's not the solution to this particular situation. I have a solution. What do you all think? Any suggestions? What would you do here? How would you bridge this gap? Split the baby? He wants 10, they want 6, sell it for 8. Does that work here? Not if it's really worth 6. Not if it's going to generate enough cash flow to pay for 6. Because the managers don't have any money. These are young people, like many of you in the room. People who don't have significant savings. They're spending their money as they earn it on their families. They're trying to put some money away for savings. But they don't have significant wells of cash to buy this guy out. So what's the solution? Well, first we've got to convince the founder that the business today is not really worth what he thinks it is if he leaves. If he's going to be involved after the sale for some period of time to transition the clients and make a formal transition of those clients today and get others to step up to generate the type of reputation that he has, okay. But right now, he's been in the spotlight, and everybody loves him, and he loves the spotlight. So we have to have a transition plan for the next level of management. We also need something a little more realistic that would work for the managers at the next level. If we're not going to sell the company, which is the other alternative, just sell it and have him transition the business to the seller and the other key managers. But the buyer is still going to look at the valuation from the standpoint of who's generating the revenue and what's going to happen if this founder leaves. So if we're going to do a management buyout, we could set up a situation where we have a floor for the purchase price that might not be as high as the founder wants it, but it's low enough for the employees to be comfortable to buy it. So you start with that. But then, why not add in something like, I will give you a percentage of the net profits for a period of time that will decline over time, so that you can get to where you want to be, in fact, get beyond that. And if the company is sold in the interim, we'll give you some type of kicker, some additional compensation out of that. And we'll compensate you currently as you start to tail off your activities, but we'll try to keep your compensation at a significant level, but then we're balancing IRS risk with that as well, right? Because we want to be careful that we're paying reasonable compensation to the founder. So how does the founder get comfortable with that? Well, first, we'd have to set levels of limits on compensation that are being paid to the managers of the business. We don't want them to come out and start paying themselves excess dollars in comp and dragging out all the earnings and not having to pay him for it and reducing the net profits. So we have to have a governor over how net profits are calculated and what we do to control that. We also want to set a limit on the payments to the founder if the profits aren't sufficient to pay him. So we have balancing in the documents and the agreements. Is the founder going to be willing to do that? I don't know. You can only try to do it. The founder may just say, to heck with it. I'm going to sell this business. I'm going to find a third-party buyer. Now, he's tried to do that 3 times and he's failed 3 times. He's hired investment bankers twice and he's been unsuccessful in doing it. And that's why he came to the management buyout alternative, which is often what happens in these situations. We'll wait and see, but there are solutions, and I have made this work in a similar situation where we had a low floor for the purchase price, which the founder was okay with because he had somebody else in there who was watching out for him. And we also made sure that he got a share of the net profits, significant share of the net profits, for a period of time, 4 or 5 years, after he severed his relationship with the company, but we made it a contingent purchase price. It's like an earn-out, if you've heard of that, or a contingent purchase price. So there's creative ways of getting people to where they want to be so that it's more of a win-win instead of a win-lose situation, which is what the founder was imposing on the other managers. Any questions on this case study? Then we have case study number 3, which is sort of the way to do it, so to speak. And it is a client that I'm currently involved with. They are a very big company, upwards of $500 million in revenue. The comprehensive estate planning for this client has been done over a period of 20 years. He's in his 70s now. I could say age 80, but he's in his 70s in the real life situation. He controls all the voting stock, but he only owns 17% of the company. And he's set up his estate planning so that his kids, while the beneficiaries of these trusts, while they'll receive the benefits of the trusts that he set up through his estate planning, the trusts are controlled by his close advisors. And the close advisors essentially form a committee that will have control over the professional managers that manage the business. Professional managers are under employment contracts. And they have significant compensation packages that are commensurate with what other similarly sized businesses would pay their executives, with bonus plans and with equity upside if the company's ever sold. Do they own any shares in the company? No way. The family owns all the shares, either through trusts or directly. But they get their compensation. The professional managers get compensated in the form of synthetic equity, which we talked about last time, we'll talk about again. Phantom stock appreciation rights. So if we have the possibility of death, and we have the possibility of permanent disability, what do we do now for our clients? What can you do? What can you suggest to them now that they do at a minimum so that they don't have to fear death as much? We all fear it. We all fear permanent disability, but when it comes to our business, which is our livelihood and our legacy to our families, we want to be careful. So we build a process, and we'll create a timeline that really maps to the stage of the business. Remember early on we talked about when we were growing and soaring businesses, there are different stages of businesses. If you were here in the earlier sessions, we talked about the startup phase all the way to the success phase to sort of maturity and when companies phase out. But when you're trying to anticipate the rough waters to navigate, you want to build an initial management succession plan.